Just let it go a minute. I have the mic. All right. So we're going live here. We thought we'd just do a quick, I need to do a new PNOE. I need to see my training zones and see where I'm at. So thought we'd mic Kate up. She'll do a little description of what's going on, and just thought we'd show you guys the process, what it's like to come in. Every member that starts here does a PNOE. All of this data that we get here drives and guides your training. So and we'll just kind of walk you through this process and see what's going on here, okay?
Here we go. All right, so Max is putting on a heart rate monitor chest strap, which I'm going to connect to the PNOE app. Okay, then we're going to calibrate the unit while he adjusts the bike to where he wants it. So the way this test is going to work is once I have this calibrated, and we're going to fit the mask on his face and the backpack on his back, and we're going to ramp him up slowly from probably what will feel like a walk, but on a bike, so 35 RPMs. And then I'm going to ramp up to 40 and then 45, and I'll coach him through all of these things. At some point, he's not going to be able to keep my pace anymore, and I will see it on my phone. And we can superimpose this later, put some pictures of it in the comments. And I will hold him to the top of the next minute and then tell him to recover. I'm going to push the recover button on the app, and he's going to leave that mask on for 1 minute while I watch his recovery come back down. If at any point you decide biking with a mask on, not for you, you can stop moving.
Got it.
And I will hit recover and leave that mask on for 1 minute. So we're going to fit this mask on. What this mask is doing, hold on, I gotta put this, is it's measuring the input of oxygen that he's sucking in to fuel himself, paired with the output of CO2 that he's breathing out in the metabolic exchange. So his nose and mouth are both covered by this mask with no air escaping. Okay, so you're going to start at 35 RPMs when I say go. I just started the device. So go ahead. So we're starting out at 35 RPMs. We're going to hold Max here for 2 minutes while he gets used to wearing the mask. And we get readouts on my screen to whether or not he's using oxygen efficiently, more or less at rest. I would say a slow movement on a bike, for the most part, is akin to easy movement like a walk outside or existing like living your life. So what I'm seeing is an output reading of his oxygen and his carbon dioxide. His heart rate's at 95 beats right now. He can see that on the bike, and he can see his RPMs. So this device reads every 30 seconds so that I have a good idea while he's going where his level of stress is, which I look at with the RER number. So right now he's sitting just under 0.7, which is efficient movement. Anything under 0.8 is considered mostly efficient, meaning he's using oxygen efficiently, which I would expect at 35 RPMs on a bike. So we're a minute 15 in, holding a steady pace. Question I get asked often is if during the test you need to use your arms. You can. It gives more of a whole body workout, but you don't have to. So in about 20 seconds, we're going to ramp you up to 40. right, up to 40 RPMs. So Max's only job is to breathe easy while maintaining the RPMs. He's doing a good job of maintaining his pace. Sometimes it can be hard. I get feedback a lot that it's hard to maintain the lower paces. And some of that is stress of your system, just figuring out how to move while your body's trying to figure out if it's going to have to reach a level of intensity fast, or if we have a whole minute of slow followed by a gradual workup. We'll often see that the body views it as pretty efficient, and you're able to maintain my pace. 20 more seconds here. So I can see that his heart rate is slowly raising up. We're at 105 beats. His RER is at 0.6, which is still super efficient. Go to 45. So he slowly makes his way from 40 to 45, and then he'll maintain 45 for a minute. What we're doing is manipulating his heart rate up nice and slow so his body has time to adjust. His heart rate's still at 109 beats. Thirty more seconds. So we're going to ramp him up a little bit slower after this, just to allow for, as the heart rate starts to go up, a little bit more time to adapt to a little bit more intensity. For a lot of people, 47 doesn't feel like a whole lot of intensity. 47. But as the body starts to equate the movement with exercise and any predisposed kind of feelings or like relationship with exercise of sitting on an assault bike and ramping yourself up to go, we want to take it nice and slow. His RER is still 0.6, showing he's really efficient. His heart rate's at 111. 30 more seconds here, and we're going to go to 50. So he's holding a nice steady pace. Heart rate's going up a little faster. We're up to 117. All right, up to 50. So we're gonna hold him for 45 seconds here as his heart rate gets to go up. RER is still at 0.6, meaning he's using all oxygen and is pretty efficient still. Then we're going to go up to 53. Thirty more seconds. Something to think about when you're the one with the mask on the bike is to take note at whether or not you're breathing easy out of your nose or your mouth. One of the metrics of knowing if you're getting more oxygen in than carbon dioxide out is if you can breathe easy through your nose, you have equal nose holes to bring in the O2 and breathe out the CO2, where as soon as you need to, up to 53, open your mouth, you need a bigger hole to breathe out more CO2. It shows your efficiency is changing. I would assume he's still breathing out of his nose. We're still at a 0.6 RER. Heart rate's at 127. We have 20 more seconds here. His heart rate's at 130 and we're still efficient. He's holding pace really nicely.
That's what I'm opening my mouth.
Max just said that he has decided to open his mouth to get more CO2 out, which I can correlate up to 55 to the RER reading of hitting 0.7. So that's kind of the moment where he's switching into work. Still very efficient. Heart rate's coming up at 136. He's at 55 RPM. $30 more seconds here. You are live, Midge. Go for it. In 10 seconds, you're going to go up to 57 RPMs. $57. So his RER now has jumped to 0.8. So that mention of opening his mouth shows a metabolic response where he started using more carbohydrates for fuel. What that means is he needs to off-gas more CO2 in order to use that fuel source. So although he's still bringing in oxygen efficiently, he's breathing out more of an equal amount of carbohydrates to produce the energy to keep his bike at 57. Heart rate's at 143. In 20 seconds, we're going to go to 60. Something to note on this test is often I get clients come in to take this and they think, but I can bike at 70 RPMs in a WOD. I've done it before. Maintaining a pace across a minute is stressful on the system, and what we're measuring is that's the metric that we're holding tight. 60. So although you probably can ride the bike at a higher RPM to maintain a steady pace at that heart rate and output is what we're using as the control to measure just the metabolic response.
So this is going to feel really good.
So Max just said he feels really good. He's at 155 beats. His RER is 0.8. So he's using equal amounts fat and carbohydrates, which probably to him feels like something he could do forever. Spoiler alert, once we look at the chart and we show as he continues on, he can't actually do it forever. As we increase the intensity in 15 seconds, we'll show that his carbohydrate usage is going to come up and his fat usage is going to go down, meaning it is not going to be as sustainable of an effort. I can see the volume of oxygen is still rising. It's at 160 beats. Go to 63. On the app, I can see that we have big jumps in oxygen where he takes a deep breath in to maintain that level of work, and then he evens out as he adjusts to be able to do it. So his oxygen level drops and his carbon dioxide level goes up. Then he takes another deep breath and it looks kind of like an inverted stair. It's at 160 beats and his RER is just shy of being very inefficient, meaning he's using less oxygen to do this work, which you can see he's working pretty hard, so you wouldn't expect him to be using an incredible amount of oxygen, i.e. breathing easy. 65. As this intensity increases, I'm watching to make sure he can maintain the same pace. So I want to make sure that he can hold 65 and he's not dropping under that or coming down to 60 to manipulate that output. And I'm also watching on my app to make sure that his oxygen level is still rising. That's the VO2 max number, meaning how much oxygen his body is going to bring in under the intensity. That gives us a number relative to his aerobic capacity. So we've got 25 more seconds here. His heart rate's up to 170. In 15 seconds, you're going to go to 67. 67. So his RER just jumped to 0.93. What I'm looking for is it to cross over to 1.0, meaning a full stress response. Right now he's quite inefficient, using almost more carbon dioxide, breathing out more CO2 than bringing in oxygen, but his oxygen number is still going up. As you can see by his effort, it's becoming a lot more hard work, and he's having to focus harder on hitting that 67. In 30 seconds, he's going to hit 70. Good, come on. Heart rate's up to 176. He's focusing hard on keeping that number up. 70. Come on. So he's sitting right at 0.97. I want to get one more reading at least to get over that 1.0. So keep it up over 70. Heart rate's at 177, 178, which is probably a pretty maximal heart rate that we would see for a working WOD, probably of under a couple minutes, so we know we're close to the end. What I'm seeing in the app is that his oxygen level is still going up though, so his VO2 max is still reading. 0.98, come on. Come on. In 20 seconds, he's gonna hit 73 and hold it for a minute. He probably feels his muscles fatiguing, and it's going to be really hard to hold that pace. In 5, you're going to 73. 73. Come on. So now I'm watching the bike to make sure he can maintain the pace that I want him to. His oxygen level dropped down as he hit an RER of 1.0, and he's done. So now we're going to recover. That was a great test.
I hit one.
Yeah, 1.03. So the minute that his oxygen dropped back down and his CO2 went up, you notice he stopped before I even told him to stop. I mean, maintaining 73 RPMs for a minute was going to be tough regardless, but what that means is that's the peak point of intensity. That's a level of output that in order to train it or exert really should be less than 2 minutes, maybe even less than that, like 15 seconds in terms of energy system training. So now he's wearing that mask for a minute so we can watch his heart rate come back down. He's back down to 170 already. 15 more seconds. Sometimes the metabolic response when you end exercise, like I'm watching and seeing, he's recovering quite well. So, and stop, is that the heart rate will actually go up.
Super fun. Easy even.
Easy.
Everyone should do it.
Just put this here. All right, so we've ended this.
I'm gonna pull it closer.
Okay. Good thing you don't have the mic for your heavy breathing.
I probably can hear it though.
Not me, I've not turned into Darth Vader. All right, so now we're gonna bring up the web portal and we're gonna analyze what we saw. So what I was watching on my screen while he was training, and then what it all means. Thank you.
Otherwise I had just your nose.
Oh, nice.
That's good. Lean right in like that, that's good.
Okay, so what we are gonna see and how we're gonna analyze this is figure out the zones and where Max should train. We'll go through this like I do for everybody to get all the data. So you made it 14 minutes. That's relevant in terms of following in your capacity for work, how long, how much work you did and how much time. Your VO2 max for this test. So on the assault bike today, the maximum amount of oxygen you brought in, I guess I get point, is about 50 milliliters of oxygen per minute per kilogram of your body weight. In terms of relativity for the ranges of these, newer athletes, deconditioned athletes, someone that's been out of training for a while typically sit somewhere around the 20s, where athletes that are professional endurance athletes are usually around the 60s to 70s. So sitting right here at 50 shows that Max is in pretty good shape. Next number I look at is the RER mean. So that was the number that I talked about a lot while he was testing. So how efficient he was, that's your respiratory exchange ratio. So anything under 0.8 is efficient and anything over 0.9 is inefficient, anything over 1.0 is stress. So the mean for this test was 0.78, which means this was an efficient test. Being a maximal test, I wanted to see that he got over 1.0, and I don't know if you heard him at the end asking if he got to 1.0. Doesn't feel good. It's where you're not using oxygen very efficiently at all. But he did get there, and overall used oxygen super efficiently
really good.
throughout. It is really good. If I look up at what fuel source, so when I keep saying oxygen and carbon dioxide, it's also related to what fuel source his body is pulling from. So he used 54% fat and 46% carbs. What that means is when you're burning fat as your fuel source, and I'll show you on the charts, your body's using oxygen efficiently and it views it as sustainable, so it can give a fuel to use that you have stored. When you use carbohydrates, they're faster, hotter, easier to burn, but they need replaced more readily. So that's why you burn. I'll show you when we get down. Makes more sense when you have the chart. On this first chart, this is how we found your RER. So blue is oxygen in. I'm looking for three things. Blue is oxygen in, and we want oxygen obviously to win for the longest amount of time. And you can see that his oxygen wins almost all the way to the end. That's that efficiency. That's that RER being under 0.8. The other thing, blue means oxygen means breathing. So obviously up into a high rate of biking, we wanted him to feel like he was breathing. Then we want this big gap in between there. And you can see where it kind of comes closer. What this big gap means is that the oxygen he was breathing in, his body was absorbing and using and changing into energy to use to keep going. So the other thing we're looking for is that number to come up here. So as I increased his intensity, I wanted his body to demand something to use for fuel, which would be fat, which would be breathing oxygen, meaning it was sustainable. So you see that rise come up here to the end until it drops. So that was at the end when I was watching to make sure that he was still bringing in oxygen. So coming down here into this chart, this purple line is his heart rate. It is this little number right here, and we're going to trace that and find out where he's most efficient. So this yellow right here corresponds to his aerobic capacity. This is where he was burning fat as his fuel source. This is where he was breathing oxygen efficiently to exchange for energy. Purple is where he started to breathe out more CO2 and use carbohydrates for energy. So you can see he's super efficient all the way up to 136 beats. Then his body's like, okay, we're not going to be able to maintain this quite as long as I started to increase the intensity. So he started to burn a little bit of carbohydrates. So it was right around here, I think-ish, we'll have to look back, that he opened his mouth.
It is. It's right there.
Right there. So essentially what that means, it says he needed to off-gas more CO2 and burn those carbohydrates. He needed a bigger hole to get those out. And you can see through here, and this is where he said, you know, it still seemed pretty easy and sustainable for him. All the way through here, he's still using fat.
So let me interject. So you might have to repeat me. Okay, but I pretty much am trying to train right here. Currently, that's what I've been doing the most of my work.
Okay.
And is this about 150? Yeah, so I try to keep my heart rate under 150 as much as possible.
Right, so you can see we're up to 100.
So just
he's
repeat
got
that, like, so they can hear me.
All right.
So what I just said.
So Max just said that what happens is he tries to train as much as he can between 140 and 150. So that 135 beat per minute rate right here. And then you can see where the fat and the oxygen still peak out, and we can trace up at the top all the way up to this little crossover point. The interesting thing, so this is 148 beats, so about 150 beats. You can see right at this moment, his heart rate shoots up to 156, like a little peak. And you can see where his carbohydrates come up and we don't see fat again. And then he comes back down right into that 150 number again. So that's an adaptation right here where his body's trying to figure out like, oh man, are we going? Is it on? Or are we actually okay? And you can kind of see where this fat starts to peak out, but the carbohydrates are coming in. Once the body starts using that as a fuel source, and I kept increasing the intensity up and up and up, he needed something else to be able to fuel that. So I would say training under this 150, if I take away everything on the other side of my hand, that's using mostly fat as a fuel source, meaning if we come up here, we're just under second 550. If I trace that up here and we look here, look at how efficient, you know, the air is still breathing out efficiently. You've got that big gap. And you can see these lines where it starts to become closer, and you can see a few of these, and this is probably where I increased. And you see how the gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it gets intense. But all under here, he's using all oxygen, breathing easy.
So I would say for zone training, right? Like that's about the top of zone 3 for me, is that?
Zone 3, I would say, is about 150 beats a minute. So that means that he's working efficiently. I'll open the chart and we'll look at the other things. He's working efficiently to 150. Then we have this zone here where I remember when you said around 160 you feel really good still. And what that is, and I mentioned that during the test, that 50-50. So he's using half carbs, half fat. It feels like that's your 3-2-1 go pace, so you can do it forever. Catch is, as you can see right here, at 167 beats, all of a sudden the fat falls off and the carbs come up.
And I no longer feel good.
Right, so that towards the end of the test, you can see the test isn't that much longer. Suddenly it's like, this is where you really sweat, this is where work really starts, this is where you probably had to focus a lot more on keeping my pace. We can probably look back at the video, and mannerisms probably have even changed, where you really focused. Right. But you can see, because he's trained this for a long time and have efficiency, you are burning both. It's just not that great in terms of burning fat. You can obviously only do it for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I've been trying to avoid 170 at all costs lately, and you can see what happens when I get there.
Right.
It's total shutdown. So
his training has not been over 170, and you can see at 170 right here.
Right.
Where that comes in. You still peak up, so you probably see some 175, because I see an adaptation through here.
Yeah, just on accident.
And you can see then it comes down. So all these little peaks are just like he's spent time in life here. So his body's trying to make it efficient. It's just not. In terms of energy system training, that would be because you've had a background where you've had to train that top end system. So I'm going to open up our reports, and we're going to look at the chart in the long exercise report. And so part of your PNOE assessment that you would get if you came in and did one with me would be this long exercise report. And it's individualistic to you. Hey, thanks, Mitch. And it goes through a whole bunch of, this is all very individualistic to Max, which he could read about later if he chooses so. Gives you muscle type breakdown, fat burning efficiency, breathing efficiency, all this stuff. What we care about is this chart right through here. So how we decide our zones and kind of what they mean. Now individualistically, I'll have to look and see. I would have to go in and manipulate this myself. So it's not overly accurate because you have adaptations of using fat.
Right, it gives me quite a bit for zone 3.
Zone 3 goes to 180. And we can go through how we would change that and why. So we've got your zone 1 from 117 to 127, which, let's go down and we'll cross-reference here. Up to 127, we have, so there must be a little tiny bit of purple right here that we don't see. That's zone 1. Agree. It's all fat. It's all easy breathing. Felt really good, I'm sure. Now we've got zone 2. Zone 2 is where your ticker training zone, your MAF, falls into. So zone 2 is where it's light. If you look at the benefits of this, improves basic endurance and fat burning, which is the goal of a lot of the training we do at Ticker, is to make you be able to endure life easily. Burning fat, it feels like comfortable, easy breathing, low muscle load, light sweating. Low muscle load is relative though, right? How I tell my athletes coming in is if you want to sit here between 127 and 143 and they have that for 40 to 80 minutes, The game then is to figure out how skilled you can be, how heavy you can go. Like light muscle load is a feeling. So, imagine that Max can put, 135 pounds on a barbell and do sets of 25 power cleans, and it feels like a low muscle load because his heart rate sits here in this zone 2 metabolic conditioning zone. That would mean he's efficient at moving that weight. Now, for some people, that might look like a 15-pound barbell. For some people, it might look like sitting on a rower. It's all individualistic to where your metabolism is.
And what you train.
And how you train. Do you take yourself out of it, get over yourself that maybe you're not efficient at moving weight yet, or running yet, or sitting on a bike or rowing, and it all depends on what you're doing. Sometimes it means slowing down, taking weight off the bar, or changing a skill until your body doesn't equate that with something that requires a lot more and different fuel.
Or more practice.
Or just more practice, motor pathways, mobility. Next zone, zone 3. So zone 3 is where most people feel the bestest between 3 and 4. Now for Max, I would change this zone 3, and we will. His zone 3 is where he starts picking up those, the carbohydrates right here. He's still burning mostly fat. So I would say he goes between that 136 and that crossover point at 148. So we're going to change that, and then 148 to go to zone 4. So what that is that's pulling in that crossover point. His zone 3 is not very big because his zone 1 and zone 2 is so big, which would be a great goal, meaning he could do a whole lot of work in zone 2 before having to tap into the zone 3. And some of his goals to stay between 137 and 150 is to make that even more efficient too. So let's drop those carbohydrates, that little bit of stress, down, and then make that crossover point come up higher and higher and higher. Something to keep in mind, every time that you see purple off the ground, so you see purple on top of yellow, it means you have to recover from that effort. Recovery means you have to replace the stores that you got those carbohydrates from. So that's after you finish working out. It may involve food. It may also involve a lot of rest and recovery in terms of putting the glycogen back in your muscles so that you can grow your muscles and get stronger and bigger and faster. That's why we train in this zone 2 for adaptations. Obviously, if we train down here, we would be in, endurance monsters. And yeah, it'd be great to, and I've seen it happen, be able to do all of your work down here and be as skilled and as fast and go as heavy as you want. But to see changes, you also need to stress these other places and break yourself down to build yourself back up. Also, one of the things to think about with why Max wanted a retest, because he knew that something had changed. And we can go back and look at all his other reports and see that he doesn't always look like this. Depending on his diet and his stress and his recovery and his training, these kind of things change, which is why he's now using the guidance between 137 to 150. So if we're going to change his zone 4, I would say between 147 and 167. So that's where we have that 50-50 split.
I would agree with that. When I see 170, I know I'm doing very close to maximal work.
Right. So that means his top end work starts at about 170. So we're going to change that. We're going to save it. We're going to publish it. Oh, so sad. You have to publish it first.
Zone 3 to 150, about 148.
Zone 2, 140. Which one was one? This is 137.
Yeah, top of zone.
And this goes to 148. And this goes to 167. And then you hit publish.
Now you can look at the report.
Now we can hit save. And now we're going to close that report again. We're going to reopen it to get accurate numbers. So me being able to come in here and manipulate this report based on what this computer found is the benefit of having somebody that is trained in reading these reports and looking at this stuff. We have a lot of experience in being able to look and understand the metabolic process. And also I know Max is an athlete, and he knows himself as an athlete to know how he feels when he trains. So that way we can change these things and we know what's happening based on the data of the test and what we saw. And knowing things like just because he has these adaptations down here doesn't mean he's actually efficient, and he can mirror that statement. So coming back to our tab, now we have adjusted zone 3. He should spend 10 to 40 minutes in zone 3, meaning he can't do it forever. And that's the one thing that he probably felt like, I feel really good between 136 and 150. That's where he does most of his training. Most of his training is probably under 40 minutes because he does mixed modal training most days. What that does is it still improves his fat burning efficiency and the lactate shuttling. It feels like moderate muscular fatigue and heavy breathing. So that feels like a workout. There is benefit in training up here, and there is benefit in training down here to be able to go forever and feel like it's nothing. Imagine if you could do your normal CrossFit, mixed modal, strength training, endurance stuff down here, and then spend an additional 10 to 40 minutes working on these things to improve the effort that you have down here. So just because you can work between 135 and 150 doesn't mean that you should not also spend time training between 130 and 135. Once we move up to zone 4, which is...
Before you move on to that, talk a little bit about just how we program with our work to rest ratios and how I try to stay zone 2 till close to the end of that interval. And then I just start to challenge that zone 2 work or zone 3 work, and then we cut it off and then we rest and recover.
So a lot of our ticker programming, it uses the work to rest ratios to keep you within these zones, is what Max was saying, if you couldn't hear him online. So what it is we program in zone 1, 2, 3, or 4, and often our workouts say in zone 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. And let's talk about what 4 is first, and then we'll kind of see like how we manipulate it. So if you look at zone 4, it's called hard. And it should be, you should spend only 2 to 10 minutes working where it is hard. And hard for Max is 150 to 170. And he reports that, yeah, that feels like work. That is probably that 3-2-1 classic CrossFit. I'm going to go, it's an AMRAP or it's a 21-15-9 kind of thing. The benefit of this, and this is really important, is it improves your VO2 max. So if I look down here and his VO2 max is 50, and I think about his goals and who he is as a person, does he really need to get to a 70 VO2 max right now? No. So does that mean he needs to spend a whole lot of time training in zone 4? Probably not. Now it feels like intense but still tolerable muscular fatigue, heavy and rapid breathing. So that's one of those, like when you are working, it feels like that. You should only feel like that for about 10 minutes because that's all you're getting out of that energy system training. Now, the thing to think about is, what if you spend over 10 minutes, that 10 to 40 minutes where you feel like you're doing heavy and rapid breathing, which I'm sure in some workouts, many people, Max included, does. What that means is, coming back to this report, you spend time up here and you see this much purple, that means you need that much more recovery because you have to come back from not being efficiently moving and not using air and using a lot of CO2. So if he does, say 20 minutes sitting right here at 160 beats, he probably needs a rest day the next day to absorb all that training. Now he did break down those fibers and he did regrow them and he's going to replace them. He probably is going to feel pretty sore. He's probably going to be extra hungry. He might even crave a lot more carbohydrates because his body's trying to replace those that it burned off. And probably going to be tired. Think about if you've been breathing really hard, you're not bringing in a whole lot of oxygen, your body's not working efficiently. So it's going to have to rest to recover from that inefficient training. Same thing goes when we hit zone 5. Now we rarely train zone 5 and you can see that you should spend less than 2 minutes there. What that does is it develops muscular endurance to lactic acids. That's that burn. Now a lot of people will feel burn down here. And that is lactate shuttling, moving those things around, but it's also muscular fatigue. Actually buffering the lactic acid to burn it needs to be done in very small chunks. In terms of how we train it at Ticker, that's a lot of your like 15-second bike sprints. with like 4 minutes off in between. So that's because you need to manipulate that energy system to have the rise and then the full fall down, because sitting at 160, 170 to 185 beats is really, really hard. And you can say it feels like almost intolerable muscular fatigue, very heavy and rapid breathing. Something like I tell you to ride an assault bike all out for 15 seconds. At 15 seconds should be torture, and you shouldn't want to lay down for 5 minutes after. Now, coming down through here, how we at Ticker use our training to do this is we often work and manipulate the work to rest ratios. I think about a workout that we did yesterday, for example, had 10 wall balls, which obviously is going to bring your heart rate up. And then it had 10 cals on a bike, that the goal was to use that biking as rest. So to bring your heart rate back down on the rest. And then it was 10 alternating dumbbell snatch, which is going to bring your heart rate back up. And you can see my finger inadvertently is going between that 2 and 3. And then we had a minute rest that's going to bring you back down. So the idea is to sit right here at the bottom of zone 2 and then let yourself creep up to do 10 wall balls. So if you think about that, like thinking about Max's numbers, say he sits, he does wall balls and his heart rate gets up to about 130, and then he hits a bike and he comes down to, 120. The manipulation is, if this is a 10 rounds for time event, which it was yesterday, how fast, how hard can he push while still making sure that he gets a perfect heart rate chart that jumps between 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3. That way, what he's doing is he's improving his endurance, fat burning on both ends, but also working that muscular fatigue and using a skilled movement of a dumbbell snatch with heavy weight and the squat and the push of a wall ball to heavy weight. How we coached this yesterday was scale the reps or scale the weight. Did you scale the weight?
I did.
So he did this workout. You scaled the weight on the dumbbell snatch?
Yep, both things. I wanted to keep it as low as I could on that workout. I needed training and not any kind of testing. So I went 14 on the wall ball and 35 on the dumbbell.
So he used a 14-pound wall ball and a 35-pound dumbbell for that workout to keep it down here. Were you successful at keeping it under 1?
I was under 150, absolutely.
You were on 50.
Yeah, so probably like 145 is what I saw the max.
So he was reporting that he stayed about 145. Now the interesting thing is those of you that know Max, is he's a really good athlete. And then for him to say that he scaled, it was personal for him to make sure that he was getting the fat burning and the efficiency out of that workout. Instead of hovering right here in zone 3, which he could have 10 to 40 minutes. The workout was 40 minutes long.
I would have been 3 and 4.
He would have been up here in 3 to 4. The catch is you would have spent more than 2 to 10 minutes
Absolutely.
in zone 2, meaning you would have had to recover a lot more today.
Yep. Yep. And I knew I needed zone 2 work. The thing that I like the most about our programming and our training is that it's, to go out and do steady state work, you don't see the changes metabolically like we're seeing. When you have these, even while you're in zone 2 and zone 3, you're challenging your ability to pull fat.
Right.
And all of that. So it turns into small, miniature little intervals within an interval.
So if we look at what Max just said about challenging your intervals within a major workout, we can see, that if he pulled himself up to 150, he still had time where he's going to have to recover, and he's going to see adaptations because he did spend time burning both fat and carbohydrates. Right. He spent time not as efficiently breathing in oxygen. Pretend this yellow graph is just oxygen, which it is. You can see where it drops down. So you don't breathe as easy when you have to breathe out as hard. So working up here, I'm sure you felt like you were working out. Yep. Working up here and then coming back down.
My main goal was to try to get back under 130 each either rest or on the bike.
Right. So manipulating himself to come back down under 130 and then come back up and down and up and down. Looking at other examples of training that you've done like this too. Like you don't always have no carb burn from the start. This is a really good test.
Day. But I have been focusing on it. I'm quite fasted right now. I haven't eaten since last night, so.
Right. So your body at rest is
efficient. But this correlates to how I feel. It's just this is just a really clean test.
Right.
So, okay, our battery is almost dead. So just end it somehow. Tell Darlene hi.
Oh, Darlene is watching. Hi, Darlene. We miss you.
Yeah. And just kind of.
Yep. So if you're interested in getting a test like this,
An analysis. And
an
a
analysis, all these things, and we can find out a lot more on how you train, how you should train, how you shouldn't train, and where your zones are. Reach out, send us a message, or
say something about, we'll just do a test, but if you want to use your test, then have us coach you to help make improvements.
We can do one-off tests. We can tell you where you're efficient. You can play with it how you like, or you can join us at Ticker, and we can program for you to make adaptations and breathe like Max.
Awesome. All right, just say thanks, bye.
Okay, thanks, bye.